Hello, welcome to an episode of Flying High with Flutter. I again am your host, Alan Wyma, and today we have a very interesting guest. I was having a little bit of discussion with him before the show. We have Piotr Sarna. Hopefully, I got it close.
Yeah,
He
you actually
is.
got it very close. But you
Uh, I,
can feel free to use Sarna all the way through the episode. That's
I'm
easier.
trust me, I'm going to because I feel like if I got it correct the first time, I won't get it correct the next time. Let me keep your name up on here while I continue the introduction. He is the author of Writing for Developers, which is I think it's a pretty recent release from Manning, right?
Yep, it's been wrapped up for us as authors, me and Cynthia, for like over a year ago. But it also takes some time to produce and release everything. So yeah, it's a couple of months old.
Yeah. Um, what really struck me about this book is that I definitely believe in the whole like idea about sharing information, and I think writing is probably one of we were talking before the show that writing is probably one of the easiest steps out there for like kind of getting yourself out there, becoming an authority. I mean, there's so many things that I can talk about on my side, but obviously you're the how do I say this? You're the foremost authority in this podcast about writing. Maybe how about we start off the way we always do, which is we have a little bit of self introduction from you. You know, who are you? Why did you decide to write this kind of book, and so on and so forth. So I'll go ahead and let it over to you.
Sure. So my name is Piotr. People can just call me Sarna if they struggle to pronounce the first name. I'm primarily a distributed systems developer. That's how I started my career at well, first a distributed file system, then a distributed database called ScyllaDB. Now I do AI, but I also do distributed systems there, so nothing has changed in that manner. And while at ScyllaDB, I also started writing lots of technical content. Why? That part is easy. I was forced to. There's a well, writing culture in ScyllaDB that not so gently pushes you towards actually writing about everything that's even remotely interesting. And this is also why ScyllaDB has a very nice and high quality tech blog. And after being forced a few times, I grew to enjoy it. People can call it Stockholm syndrome, I guess, but it is really beneficial for everyone, I think, to write a lot. And a while later, I was also approached by an editor who wanted me to write a book about the database, ScyllaDB. I refused, but I also rerouted him to our marketing department, and we ended up writing a book about distributed databases. That one is released for free. You can just read it online. It's called Database Performance at Scale. It's really nice. And Cynthia was also co-author of this previous book with me. And then after we wrote the first book, we just couldn't resist starting another project. So here we are now after releasing Writing for Developers. That's my short story.
So basically, you got hands on with kind of learning to write as a developer by learning to write as a developer, right?
Yeah, definitely. And fortunately for me, there was also, as with many companies, there's also an editing phase where people who are usually native English speakers, but also more expert at releasing blog posts, that they go through everything and they fix some things. They basically just review what you wrote. And if you had this review enough times, you just start to get the gist of what a good blog post looks like. So then you also obviously learn a lot from from even using English language to structuring the blog the right way and so on.
What kind of comes to mind is that I mean I guess you can only speak from Polish, right? Is that when you are learning in school, are you actually learning the English terms, or do you have a localized term for all these different IT terms, or do you actually use, like I said, the English version and like all the other words around it is basically going to be the Polish words like the or whatever, this kind of stuff. How do you learn in the technology? Because I mean that has a big influence, right? Because if you never learn the English terms in school, it's going to be much more difficult, right?
Right. So there are two schools. Some people try to kind of preserve Polish language and translate all the terms, but to be honest, it doesn't work well in tech. First of all, programming languages aren't usually translated, so it's better to just learn the terms, because you also know what the keywords are, what they mean. So it also looks super weird if you slap Polish variable names into code base that is already English because of the keywords. So the tech world should stay English only, and this is where schools in university are heading anyway. So just to keep the technical terms English, just because it's well, first of all, it's very ambiguous sometimes if you translate it, and then you don't really know what to translate it back to. So it's better to just keep everything in English. That's how I learned it, and I believe it's only being more like English only for younger generations as well.
Yeah, I also think that it's good. I mean, obviously, I'm a native English speaker, so uh, I prefer the English terms. But when you start to kind of talk to other developers and communicate your ideas, it's really, really difficult. And for sure, what I can say is for some of the terms, right? Like the word object, if you're doing like OOP, the term in Chinese is 对象, which is it could actually be translated as like your like significant other. So it's like it's really, yeah, it's really weird. Like it, I don't know. It also has other meanings too. Like I think it also means like thing or something, but usually you would use it for, your SO, your significant other. And so if you start talking about Doishang, and it's just like, you know, people get confused what you're even talking about. And then even the error messages like object is missing. If you can imagine that like in Chinese, like your SO is missing. It's like really weird. Like what's going on over here? So I also obviously think that it's better to use that, because sometimes I can use all the other words in Chinese, but then when it comes to the specific terms, I just know the English one, and sometimes they don't know the English term, and so we often have this kind of trouble, and we have to look up in the dictionary what we're talking about over here. So it gets quite difficult to communicate. Um, but I think that's a far and few. Like you said, I believe that the way that you're talking about is like a lot of people, they usually learn the English term at least, and they may learn their whole studies in English, which makes it easier for international communication. But kind of coming back to the main topic, right? Um, this book, right? There's a lot of value in writing. Um,
Yeah.
that's just one output. Like I think doing this podcast is another form. I would say in the same area. Like there's so many benefits to that, and actually you go through it in your book. Maybe I'll just let you kind of hand it over and talk about like the benefits of writing and what's the point, and yeah, there's like so many benefits, not just for the people who read it, but also for yourself. Yeah, it's just everlasting. Please,
Yeah.
I'll let you
Yeah, I
take it
mean,
over.
it's like it's mm, barely fit in a single chapter of the book, like all the benefits of writing. One of those is definitely that you can evolve that into presentations on some conferences, into podcasts, into whatever else. Because if you start with some content, you can just you don't even have to change anything. You can just transform it very cheaply into some other form that people prefer to consume it in, for instance, a deck on an online conference or a podcast episode. Just like kind of is happening right now with the book of mine. So that's one thing if you want to kind of advance your career, your personal brand, however you call it. Uh, there are many personal benefits as well. First of all, if you're not an English speaker, you will learn English by writing English. And I do advise people against starting with their native language if it's not English, because it just narrows the kind of the audience. Most of let's say hacker news consumers expect an English blog post to land there. So it's better to just learn English and write in English. Then you do get kind of peer review of your ideas. It's not only just the things you write about, but yeah, anything that's mentioned in the blog will get some comments on the internet. Likely, it will get some unfavorable comments, let's say, as well. But that's if it's constructive criticism, then all good. If it's not, then you can just ignore it. You will also I believe you will improve the understanding of your own code if you write about it, because if you try describing what you implemented and you fail, then it means that maybe you need to go back and figure out if you do understand what you actually implemented in the first place. Then there's career development as well, because once you release a few blog posts, it's way more likely that people will start noticing you. And by people, I mean, for instance, startup CEOs who browse Hacker News and try to figure out if some of those blog post authors are maybe looking for a job. What else? It's also a very nice way of kind of writing a journal for yourself. You can just dump your ideas somewhere, and then if you want to go back to them and refresh your memory, you can just read your own post and try finding some code snippets or something like that from it. I do that as well. I did come back to my own posts because I remember I had a snippet that does something in, let's say, Zig language, and I didn't remember exactly what it was, but it was there forever, released as a blog post, so I just found it and used it. So yeah, that's a couple of points I'd like to make about why writing is beneficial for everyone.
Yeah, you definitely hit on all the major points. Um, the other thing I would like to discuss is about like the process of writing is really really complicated. Um, I've heard. I mean, how do I say this? Is should we just start writing, or do we actually need to kind of plan and think about it and do all this kind of stuff? Because you do discuss in your book like different ways of writing, like different approaches in terms of like styles, right? Um,
Mhm.
but if you're just starting off, should you just write and then just worry about, once you get used to it, then start making it a little bit more well structured and maybe even come back to previous articles and structure them better? Or do you think it's better to really try to get it right from the beginning and spend time on really getting the right style for your audience? I mean, do you have an opinion about that?
I do, yeah. First of all, my like meta opinion is that it depends on what works for you. So there's a like bottom up and top down solution and combinations of those. Uh, I personally just prefer to dump all the content into a doc in a like barely coherent state, just everything I want to write about, maybe some code snippets, maybe some links, and so on, and then make it into a few paragraphs and maybe put the snippets in the right places so that the blog has a nice form. But it does also make sense to start with the structure, because you might not have the final idea of what all the details are, but if you already know what points you're trying to make, and let's say there are some 3 or 4 points, you can just make them paragraph headers, and then once you have those, you can just one day write one of the paragraphs, fill it in so it's complete, then write another, and then only after you finish all those, you can go through the whole post and try to optimize it. Maybe drop some things that are unclear, maybe add some points that were missing, maybe sum everything up, and so on. So you just need to try out different approaches. Some people prefer the structure first and then fill the gaps. Obviously, it doesn't have to be right the first time. So you can just iterate over it yourself. There's also no point in making it perfect, because there's a there must be a right balance between optimizing the smallest details and just releasing the thing so that people can actually read it. Especially that after you released it, nothing prevents you from just fixing issues. If you see comments online that something was wrong, or that they don't understand something, you can just release a new version, updated one, maybe an errata or something. So uh, I do advise just starting something, be it either structure or content, but just fill the document or notepad, whatever you write in, fill it with as much data as possible, and then you can just iterate over the missing bits.
Well, I mean, I was just looking at your nailing the writing process, and I think this is some really good stuff in here. Um, I like the idea that you can look at other examples of from other people how they also approach the topic, and I think it's a really good idea because you can start to get some ideas about, you know, how other what other people said, of course, but then how they covered it, what you liked, what you didn't like, then you can kind of develop your own style, and also it kind of lets you know, did you understand it? Is this are you the right audience for this? Because you may find that maybe it's too low level or too high level. It depends on, you know, your style or how much you really know about this kind of topic too, right? If you can get some more ideas. And I think you also mentioned also something really interesting too, which is that you had an editor. You talked about that briefly. Um, do you actually recommend that when you're starting off that you have somebody that you can say, "Hey, would you take a look at this before I publish this? Tell me what you think," or do you think that let it go out and you said read the comments and see what people say?
So I do believe that it helps a lot if it kind of makes you less stressed about releasing something, because there, at least I at first had some kind of this ridiculous, let's say, stage fright, although I wasn't on a stage because it was just writing something and then releasing it later. If you have an editor, then some of the mm, like potential blame goes to somebody else who also read it and thought it's worth releasing, right? So that helps psychologically. What uh, I would recommend, if someone works at a company that has a corporate tech blog, to just use the fact that there are some editors, some people that can professionally go through your blog post and point out the mistakes and maybe advise on something, because it just helps you learn. Uh, on the other hand, even if you're all on your own and you actually don't work at any company that has a tech blog and you don't have access to any professional editors, you can still just either ask a friend, or we live in beautiful times where you can ask the artificial intelligence to just help you review. I do, we as both authors, Cynthia and me, advise against trying to produce blog posts with AI, because at this point they aren't very good. I think that at it, the outcome is, first of all, it's clear to see that you didn't write it, but AI is even right now very good at reviewing posts. So I advise people, even if you don't want to show your blog post to anyone, go over a few rounds of AI assisted review, because it can yield some very interesting results.
Yeah, I highly recommend the AI part. At least like when I'm trying to formulate something, and actually I haven't done it myself. Usually I ask other people. We're working together on some content, and then I'll say, "Well, I want to say something like this, but more like this kind of style." And I think about 50 to 80% of the time it can kind of nail it, or it gives me like eight different choices, and somewhere in there I choose what I want and I refine it a bit more. So I think that's a really good part, really good point, and I almost forgot about that. Yeah, I don't know. It can actually review and give you feedback of your whole article. Like, what kind of review can it give you?
It can give you lots of, well, maybe surprisingly interesting reviews. And the best part is that it's like AI is, I think, even better than your colleague for reviewing from certain aspects, because AI usually operates on some context that you gave it, and in this particular case, you can give your blog post as the only context that it has about what it should review, and then you can ask things like, what is unclear, like what is unproven here, what needs more explanation, and for that the AI nails it. All of the models I tried are really good at saying, okay, so this point that you made about this programming language not supporting something, I have no idea why you said so. You need to provide some source, or that if yeah, I mean, for you can it can also point out that there's some kind of a logic lead between paragraphs 2 and 3. I have no idea how they're related, so maybe add some sentence that kind of joins them logically. Why did you move from this topic to another? And for this, AI is just perfect. It's something that only sees your your working draft, your blog post, and can reason without being biased. For instance, because you ask your colleague that works at the same company, they are also biased. They may already know some internals about your project that the AI and your readers don't know. So that's something to try out. And I do recommend everyone to, even people who wrote their own content, to just try it out on their existing blog posts and see what AI thinks about it. And in lots of cases, there are some very legit points that something was actually missing in those all the blog posts of yours.
I This is kind of still in relation to as you're writing the article, right? As you're well, it doesn't have to be an article. As you're writing, right? Should you, like, let's say you're doing a blog, do you need to actually keep sources around and point to things saying, I got this from over here, or is that just kind of something extra you can give to people? Because sometimes you may, I'm sorry, how do I say this? On the internet, right? Whether or not it's opinion, you're always going to have somebody who says, no, 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 you're wrong, blah, blah, blah. So
Mm-hmm.
is it worth it to kind of have sources for some of your arguments, or do you think that's just something like you can worry about later on if you really want to get down that kind of path?
I mean, it is like extra content, but it's I appreciate it when I read a post and and there is something I don't know the source of, and if there is a link explaining why something was written, I just appreciate it. So it's like bonus points. But in other cases, AI can also point you to like some real gaps. For instance, that you assume something that readers know, that I don't know, that in one of the databases there are consistency models that do something, and you assume that everyone knows it already, and you write a paragraph assuming that, and AI doesn't know that. So it points out that, hey, maybe you should explain why do you think that if you write something twice to a database, it does something wrong. So yeah, I think it just helps you see what would somebody who isn't from your niche, for instance, who isn't a programmer in your company or isn't somebody well versed in whatever project you're describing, to see what they see and what they might be missing, so that they actually understand what you're writing about.
Now, should we be concerned about methods of that people can give us feedback? I mean, do we have to provide a commenting feature or whatever, or is that kind of, just let it be? Should we just post stuff online and then just, if they really want to find us, they can, send us an email or whatever? Or do you think that's a good idea to like somehow facilitate having people give active feedback at least at the beginning, to kind of that way we can iterate a little bit more?
All right. So some platforms like Medium, I believe, has common functionality, so you can just it's just there. If you're publishing there, then there's no problem. If you're posting on your corporate blog, you likely don't have a comment section because it's just like an article. In which case, you're not the decision maker anyway because it's your corporate blog post. But I think the best source of comments is these news aggregators. So, for instance, Lobsters and Hacker News. If your post is even remotely popular, it will probably land there on the front page, and there you've got all the comments. If you filter around the 95% of negative comments from people who didn't even read through it, there the remaining 5% is usually something quite interesting, and then you can just derive from there. So I don't think it's super important to make sure that every single post has a comment section, because yeah, you can just assume that some of them will not be read by many people and nobody will like to comment anyway. And if it gets popular, there are platforms which already have comment sections, and there you can see how the discussion goes.
Okay. I wanted to go back to what you said about writing in English if it's not your native language. What I wanted to say was that, do you also think it's a good idea to also like blog in a non-English speaking language too? Because I think that there's still a lot of people who would like to read the content in their own native language, right? So in particular, of course, I'm going to have to mention China again because obviously I'm so close to there, being in Hong
Mhm.
Kong. And what I noticed is that there's a lot of like local kind of famous people in China, and they're blogging all in Chinese, not in English, right? And some of the people who are blogging in English outside of China, they don't always get picked up, right, because of the language barrier, right? And I do know of a couple of other people in tech that are non-native English speakers, but they're doing all of their like promotion stuff in their own local language, and I think that's actually helped them to grow. Right? For me, I've been making YouTube videos some time ago, for quite some time, and a little bit niche language stuff, and I only got about 2K, like less than 2K followers, right? But the reason I'm bringing this up is there's another guy who's been doing this for I think a shorter time. He's in Indonesia, and I think he's got like at least 10K, maybe even 100K subscribers. I think probably most of them, of course, must be in Indonesia itself. And he kind of like nailed that like local factor, right? And do you think that that is another thing that maybe we should actually let people, not let people, I would say that it's not such a bad idea to actually blog only in English, or like you can also kind of corner your own market, no?
Yeah, that's fair. I am definitely biased because the Polish or even European market looks the way that you're literally just narrowing your audience if you don't write in English. I don't think I would increase my audience substantially if I wrote in Polish or any other European language. To be fair, especially that all those English keywords and other things, they just get mixed into the article, and it looks a little weird, at least from my perspective. Yeah, I mean, it definitely makes sense, especially for those larger markets like China. If there's millions of developers who would like to read something in your language, then by all means, that makes total sense. What makes even more sense, I guess, would be to just maintain, if it's not too much work, two versions of your blog post. Just write it down in English and in your language of choice of your like first language, and then you just get all the benefits for exchange of some more work. But let's be honest, like translating your own words, it's not the same amount of work as figuring out a good blog post.
I mean, it can be. I guess it depends, right? Because even I have a hard time trying to translate stuff back and forth from Chinese to English, English to Chinese. Because some words like you cannot get the right punch, right? If you say something in Polish or maybe somewhere that you don't know how to exactly get the
Oh
right
yeah,
meaning, right?
that's fair. I mean, the in that case, I would expect that the English version is more generic and like that doesn't have the same spirit or however you call it, because you're just more fluent in your first language. You think in it. So for people who have internal monologue, of course, uh, yeah, that makes sense. But still, maybe it's worth it to maintain an English version for people who don't want to. Well, otherwise you risk people reading an automatically translated article from you, and that's even worse. So better to just provide the version if it broadens your audience, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. Um, Now going on to the process, right? Let's say you did your research, you've seen what other people are writing, you find the right topic, you figure out the style that you want to go for, you maybe have gathered up enough, I want to say evidence, but gathered up enough kind of resources to kind of back up your thoughts and ideas. You've written it down, you planned it, you wrote it down, you've done a couple of drafts, you gave it to people, rewrote it again, and now you're ready to publish it, right? Um, Now I see over here you have some stuff about metadata and kind of like titles and headings and things like that. Do you have any advice about what kinds of things we should be ready for? Because yeah, this section over here, just like title and headings and bolding things, that's pretty tricky, right? Because you have to be careful which ones you want to do, because SEO is a huge thing, right? You don't want to spend so much time on it and not get the proper SEO that you want to get. Do you have some some advice you can give about how to actually properly select both the metadata and like which things to kind of highlight, which words to use?
Right. So fortunately for me, I never really had to concern myself with that part, because this is I guess the main advantage of handing it to an editor or somebody who just knows. how to structure it. Cynthia, my co-author, is this kind of super professional editor, ghostwriter, and so on. She's got decades of experience writing, so I really didn't need to focus on that too much. Uh, what I usually focus on is maybe optimize everything a little bit, not for general CEO and making sure that people can find your article in search engines, but let's say to just optimize it for Hacker News front page. There are certain things that you can do which aren't very hard to make it more likely to land there, because that's at least from my perspective as a tech blog post writer, I usually want to end up there because that's where most of the audience comes from. And there are simple things, to be honest, like keeping your title quite short, so one line, even if it renders on mobile, just one line, some action item in there, so not a boring title from encyclopedia, but rather maybe some question, maybe an interesting keyword. Uh, what I really recommend is go through all the blog posts that you found personally interesting, write down all the titles, and then try to find the common features that those titles had, because the title was the first thing that kind of got your attention. And this is the important bit, because you just don't want your blog post to be scrolled through without people like even opening it. So it's good to just start with even just the title and make sure that it's noticeable. And the same goes after you got the initial attention. You should also assume, I also kind of do that, that people will just scroll through your whole article. First of all, if it's too long, they will probably just ignore it, because the attention span, like globally, is ever shortening. But then, if you put large enough paragraphs with interesting keywords in there, then people can try and judge in 5 seconds if those paragraphs are interesting for them. And then only after that, they will qualify your post for actually reading through the whole thing.
So this popped in my head. I was just thinking, if you want to pick up some traffic, right? Is it worth it to actually spend time on at a topic that you really, really love and really care about, but people may not really care so much about? Or is it better to like at the beginning say focus more on like what everybody else is talking about? So for instance, I'm not sure if it's still going on or not, but a lot of people are talking about Snow White, right? That movie came out, like everybody was talking about Snow White. Should I write a Snow White article just to kind of get into the mix, or is it worth it just to say, okay, you know what? I don't really care about that. How about I talk about this other thing that people don't know about? Like, let's say that I just watched the movie Cocaine Bear the other day. Yeah, you probably never heard of it, but maybe I like it so much I want to talk about it, right? What do you think about this kind of way?
I would personally start with writing to my niche, because then you can grow a small audience, because every niche has some audience, even you are the audience of something that you're writing. So likely, at least your colleagues and some competitors are willing to read about something that you wrote. Then it also kind of gets you up to speed, gets you recognizable even in those small circles, and then you can also try tackling the popular topics. The problem with writing about popular topics is that I think that the sad truth is that this is kind of like an expert tier uh, blog post category, because people will only be interested in your opinion on a very popular topic if you are also quite popular already. If you're just one of 2,000 people that wrote about Snow White, then I think it's just way more likely that people will pick up I don't know what the Primagen thinks about Snow White rather than you. So it's better to, I think, build your reputation as a writer bottom down from some things that you actually know of and care about, and then try to tackle some general popular topics.
That makes sense. So, I prepared my article. Let's go back to the the kind of life cycle, right? So we left
Mhm.
off at kind of preparing like the final step of posting it, right? The metadata, making sure I bold things and the titles and making sure everything's kind of there. Let's say I got that part done. I submit my article, right? Um, Really important stuff is getting people to actually read it, right? You can put it up online, but doesn't mean it's going to get caught, right? I mean, if you just have one article about a very niche topic, it could be at the bottom of a 8 million page Google search, right?
Yeah.
But there's ways that we could raise that up and bring people to our work, right? Um, you mentioned a couple of things in here. Do you mind to kind of go through how people can start to promote their work so other people actually do catch on and know who they are?
Sure. There are, first of all, it depends how you decided to post and where you decided to post your articles. It can be your own site, but then it can also be one of the well, platforms, frameworks for submitting, and then there are aggregators. So if you just start with your own post, then nobody will likely just randomly find it on the internet. So we need to also promote it somehow. It can be social media. Just start posting about it in some circles that might be interested, and hopefully some people will actually read it. And once you grab this initial audience, hopefully if you release another piece, they will tell other people, and you will get some more readers. That's for your own pages, because then the nice part of your own site is that you control it, but then less nice part is that it's harder for people to find it. Then there are some platforms like Medium, where they can host your blog posts for you. The huge advantage of that is that you can also tag your posts as one of these categories, and then people who just read Medium and just lurk it, scroll it, can find your article because it's related to some other article also on Medium. That's which is a huge plus. There are also all kinds of pages, web pages, and platforms that republish your existing content. So they are fine with taking your blog post and putting it on their page, backlinking to your original content as well. That just gives you extra audience pretty much. So it's usually a good idea to do so. And then the totally separate category, which is something I actually recommend if your employment situation can help, is to post from your company corporate tech blog post, tech blog, because then it's someone else's job to actually promote content in there, and it's likely that some people are interested in it already, and they just read every new article that appears for, let's say, your database web page, and there you can kick off really well. If you, of course, if you work at a company that has a technical blog, but then again, you can also try and make your company invest into a blog page, because might be the case that the marketing department is interested in keeping an official blog, as long as there are internal writers also happy to provide content for them.
That's a good point. I mean, if you do have some professional resources, and I think what's also good too is if you do have those professional resources or people that actually know how to promote their own content, it's actually probably worth it to sit down and see how they do it, right? In case you ever need to do that yourself, you should have some ideas. And some of these professional people that do it for companies, even if they don't do a good job, it may be a good idea to figure out what not to do, because there is some of these companies that don't do it maybe so well, or at least that gives you an idea about what works, what doesn't work, things like that. So that's a pretty good point. Um, yeah, I mean, I think you hit like kind of the nail on the head for most of this stuff. Yeah, I think that's all pretty good stuff. I mean, I don't know. I'm pretty sold on this. I kind of was just scrolling through over here. Your book has got some great stuff. We didn't even discuss about any of the patterns. I'm not sure if you want to talk about that because we're kind of approaching the end of time. I don't think you'd be able to get through all of that in time. But plus, also, if we went through everything in the book, then people wouldn't need to purchase it, right? So we can't give away too much information, right?
Well, on
Um,
the other hand, if you would like to write and release a book, don't get motivated by financial benefits, because they're Yeah, it's just not gonna happen. You are likely not Martin Kleppmann. You're not getting millions from your book. So
Even
it's fine if you also don't. If you also don't just buy it. It's like the commissions for authors aren't so amazing in the tech space. Like the main motivation, at least for me, honestly, and for Cynthia as well, was really to share this knowledge. So yeah, that happens. So that's good. But back to the patterns, since we still have a few minutes, I guess. I won't describe all of them, but we did recognize that when you scroll Hacker News, blog posts can usually be qualified into one of the patterns. Some of them are backhand, for instance. This is where people try to find a bug in their code, and there's a specific structure that popular blog posts of this pattern have, and you can also try to follow this pattern and this structure if you want to start your blog post, and it's likely going to be an interesting read just because yeah, it just naturally happens in the real world that lots of these blog posts from given category have a similar structure. So it means that probably it kind of evolved into the best structure for reading such a thing. There are also patterns for benchmarks. You can clearly see that they are distinctly different from other types of blog posts. A pattern about sharing your thoughts on some trends, so a popular topic again. This is also something that has a distinct structure. Yeah, and there are a few other patterns that we described. Not all blog posts fit into a single category, but I think 90% of them do. If I just opened Hacker News right now, I could probably qualify most of the posts into one of those.
okay. I have no other questions for me because, like we talked about before the show. You may have also touched over here is that a lot of stuff is pretty stuff that I've seen before, and people may have already heard before, and we definitely covered it. Sometimes it's worth it to hear it again. But is there something that you think that we should touch on before we sign off?
Yeah, I just have a message for everyone who wonders if they should read a blog post. Yes, just do it and release it. It doesn't really hurt. You learn something in the process, and it's better to just write it and release it than not. So just go ahead and write something. It's definitely worth it. There really is no downside for it.
I can personally say that I like I said before, I was making YouTube videos. There's been quite a few times where like I've made a video about a topic and I wanted to tell somebody how to do something, and I'm like, wait a minute, I made a video, and I would just send them the link. Similar idea where it's like you wrote about something that you want to share with the idea. And even for myself, like I'm like, wait a minute, I think I did this before, and actually I had to look up the tutorial that I did about it. And then again, because I did the work before, although not writing, still same realm, I looked it up, reminded myself how to do it. So definitely worth it just to give it just to try it out, like just get started, right?
Yeah,
So
and one more thing, if I may, that I would like to mention is that as part of like of soft promotion of the book, we also because we described quite a few real blog posts and categorized them into those patterns, but we also continue to do so on a page called writethat.blog. We just monthly pick a few nice popular blog posts, assign a pattern to them, and describe what was nice about it. So even if you don't want to read the book, you can just browse through it. It's a nice aggregator for blog posts that we as the authors found interesting.
okay, I have it queued up over here on my other screen. I'll take a look at it. Yeah, so thanks for coming on. And the book again is called Writing for Developers, and actually has a little what do you call that, subtext or whatever, called blogs that get read. So it definitely talks about how not just write, but write that people actually read it, which is really important. We
Yeah,
don't want to spend time on stuff that people don't actually get any value out of, except for ourselves
right.
maybe. You can pick it up on Manning.com. In the show notes will be a coupon code, and yeah, it's great to have you on, and hopefully have you back on again in the future, maybe for the second edition. Who knows?
Yeah, or maybe just another book.
Another book. You're a lot of people they're not too sure if they want to do the second one, right? So you want to keep going and make another one, or you're not sure yet?
Yeah, yeah, I think we will. I also only ever write a book with Cynthia because I just can't imagine writing something on my own. But
Yeah.
yeah, with a co-author who also happens to be super professional at actually writing content, it's way easier.
All right. Well, let us know if you write another one, and we'll definitely share it to the audience. So, again, it's great to have you on, and yeah, like I said, we'll probably have you back on again in the future if you keep writing books.
Hopefully, yeah.